Now it's time for Power of Prophecy, continuing the legacy of Tex Mars, exposing evil, and promoting Jesus Christ as Savior. Here's your host, Jerry Barrett.
Hello, friends, and welcome to another edition of Power of Prophecy. I'm your host, Jerry Barrett. Honored to have you join me again this week. It is time for Information Overload. We're up to volume number 19. My buddy Pat McShay is a happy contributor to Power of Prophecy's radio show. Pat, welcome back.
Hey, Jerry, it's great to be back.
I label this as a fast-paced, multi-topic discussion because when we get after it, we really just kind of go crazy, Pat.
Oh, I know.
There was recently in the news about Ukrainian drones striking deep in the heart of Russia. And this happens just a couple days after Lindsey Graham, there was another congressman that went with him. They met in Kyiv with Vladimir Zelensky. Was this, you think this was a mission to approve these bombings in Russia?
Yeah, he went over there with Richard Blumenthal, the guy who was busted for stolen valor and on his service in Vietnam that never happened. But yeah, you think about it. These were surprise attacks supposedly Trump knew nothing about, and they were carried out in the middle of these peace talks in Istanbul. And, you know, getting out of the Ukraine war is an issue that Trump ran on. 70-80% of the population is against staying in Ukraine. And, you know, I don't understand what Lindsey Graham is doing over there. Steve Bannon said on the War Room the other day that Trump could arrest Lindsey Graham as soon as he gets back or revoke his passport and not let him back in the country. But, you know, you've got Lindsey Graham and John McCain were involved in stirring up revolution in Ukraine 15, 20 years ago, and they conspired with Obama before the bloody coup to overthrow the Yanukovych government back in 2014. And, you know, I've said for a long time that the CIA is driving this war, and I just don't think John Ratcliffe, Trump's new CIA director, I mean, he's a nice guy, but I don't think he has a clue how to rein in the vast power and control of this monster agency that JFK thought he could. He realized that over 60 years ago that they were too big and too powerful, but they killed him when he said he was going to blow them up. So Trump has to worry about that if he truly is going to go against the CIA. But yeah, we got trouble there. What do you think? Do you think Trump really didn't know that Graham was going to go over there?
I seriously doubt that he didn't know, but there are so many layers within the CIA that there is no way, short of just totally imploding the agency, that you're going to be able to have any semblance of control. Ratcliffe is in a room full of mice, and he's barefoot with the number of layers that are involved within the CIA. You've got different factions that are pro-Israel, different factions that are pro-Palestine. There are factions that are pro-South Africa, pro-Russia.
Right.
I don't buy that there is every layer in the CIA is pulling in one direction to make America great again. Is it possible Trump was kept out of the loop? It's possible, as much as he is busy, I don't know, pontificating for the news media.
Yeah, the CIA to me is like the golden Fort Knox. You know, CIA, we really don't know what's there. We don't know how big it is. We don't know how vast their networks go. I don't think anyone has a handle on it, especially the new Trump administration. So that should worry everybody, especially since we're on the precipice of World War III. I don't think people understand that the Russians are not fooling around. And we underestimated them when they said they were going to move into Ukraine over the bombings of the Russian-speaking Donbass area. He kept warning us and Ukraine, and they wouldn't listen. So this was all on Biden, and it may not have happened had Trump been in office. But, the Russians said that they had no communication at all with the Biden administration in 4 years. That's just dangerous.
Yeah, especially with a country with that many nukes.
Yes.
And they've stated flat out, we're not afraid to use them.
Oh, right. I don't think they are. And we're playing with fire. Trump really needs to get a handle. He's worried about Iran having a nuclear weapon, which I don't think they do. They could have. They choose not to. I think he should worry about the country that has hundreds of nuclear weapons.
Right. You mentioned Iran, and I had Chuck Baldwin on a while back, and we talked about this. It goes heavily against the Quran. They do not want to have to build a nuclear bomb. They have the capability, and I don't remember if Chuck said they had the ability to do 4 or 5 that they could put together in a few months. But speaking of Iran, there is all of this pressure for Trump to just bomb Iran, bomb Iran, like John McCain.
McCain when was he singing that? Like 20 years ago?
Yeah. But the people that are looking to, it almost seems like they want to foment a world war, a nuclear holocaust, so to speak. And we know that the Jews believe that by this happening, they're going to be able to reign supreme and they'll get out of this scot-free. But this bombing of Iran, if it were to happen, it would prove to me that Trump is completely controlled by Bibi and the IDF and the Mossad and is an Israel firster and not America first. What do you think? Yeah,
I mean, the bottom line is no one says anything about Israel's internationally reviled and secret, so-called secret nuclear weapons program. But, that was built by treasonous U.S. politicians and military brass that conspired to allow Israel to build their illegal program. And, you just have to wonder if, 2 weeks ago, Trump was saying that he would allow them to continue with their nuclear program as long as they could do inspections and ensure that they weren't building a bomb. But now I hear today that that's out, and he's saying now that, nope, we're not going to do it. He's not going to allow any nuclear power. So to me, Trump is now proposing something that he knows the Iranians will never accept. So is this all just preparation for a strike in the future by Israel? It could be. The Bush administration, they knew that there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. That's been proven. And yet they told us for a year plus, that we're looking for weapons and we don't want to go to war. But we now know that they already made the decision to go to war with Iraq before 9/11. Most people don't even know that.
No, they had to have the Pearl Harbor incident first.
Yes, and, let's face it, there is a mountain of evidence that Israel planned and carried out 9/11 with people within our military and our intelligence agencies. And that same thing happened with the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Think about that.
Now, you mentioned Israel's nuclear program. For the longest time, and I looked this up personally, Pat, I went to Google Earth and I typed in Dimona, and it was blotted out by Google Maps. They wouldn't even recognize the fact that there was a nuclear facility. at Dimona in Israel. It was blotted out. Now it shows up.
The secret's out now.
Oh, for sure. You and I both know, and so do the listeners, I'm 100% positive, know that the nuclear secrets that we developed with Oppenheimer and the Manhattan Project, Oppenheimer's Jewish, all of this information, even though physics is not able to be kept secret, but the way that the bomb was constructed to create an implosion, all of that data through the Jews on the Manhattan Project went to Israel. Israel had insiders that stole fissile material from the United States and shipped it to Israel. All of this being said, why hasn't Israel's nuclear program ever been inspected by the International Atomic Agency?
Well, they won't allow inspections, which is one reason that it is internationally reviled. Most of the Western countries are as controlled by Israel as the U.S. is. These European politicians are all controlled by Israel, and they're never going to demand inspections of the Dimona facility. So remember, the last guy that demanded inspections of the Dimona facility was John F. Kennedy again. And there is a lot of evidence that Israel and the Mossad were involved in the JFK assassination. The chief counterintelligence at the CIA in 1963 was Jesus Angleton, and he was a Zionist and he was involved in over 20 different operations with Israel and the Mossad. So people need to look into that. French writer Laurent Guyet wrote a fantastic article people should look up. It's called Angleton, the Kennedy Assassination, and the Mossad. It was on uns.com, but fascinating article. She actually wrote an entire book about Israeli involvement in JFK's murder.
Like I said, the CIA has so many levels, and there was Dulles, there was Angleton, there were so many people, and JFK actually sent a letter to Ben Gurion at that time, who was the prime minister of Israel, telling him to shut down his nuclear weapons program, and if he didn't, there were going to be sanctions, and Kennedy was going to send people over there to destroy it with or without Israel's help. And next thing you know, Ben Gurion has resigned and Kennedy is dead.
Yeah, and most people don't know that Alan Dulles' assistant CIA director, his brother, was the mayor of Dallas, Texas. Did you know that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There are so many intricacies to the assassination of JFK that people who have never studied it have no clue. None.
Right.
But when you start putting the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle together around the assassination, it points to one direction and one direction only. People are so gaslit today, Pat, that they're not taught history, true history. They're taught what the publishers want us to think and to know, and they can doctor it however they want because they know people are too lazy to go research for themselves.
Well, right. And Rasmussen just put out a new report that 57% of Americans now support Trump's plan to bomb Iran. That just goes to show you that, most of the country is just propagandized and clueless.
Yep. Between the controlled media and the propaganda put out by the White House. I mean, think about how many pro-Zionists Trump has in his cabinet, in his White House. I mean, he's got Huckabee as the ambassador. He is a God's chosen people zealot.
Well, yeah, he's the guy that said that the Palestinian people are fictitious. There is no Palestine. There are no Palestinians. He's just a Zionist brainwashed idiot to me.
Yeah, he is pro-Zionist sycophant.
Yeah, and I've written this in a couple articles that Bibi Netanyahu was asked not long ago what he thought about the Zionist Christians that supported Israel, and he called them useful idiots. And I also like to point out in a lot of my articles that people need to watch these man on the street interviews when they ask Israelis what they think of Americans and American Christians. They hate Americans. They hate Christians. And so people need to wake up in this country. Fox News runs these commercials about the starving Holocaust victims. How can there be starving Holocaust victims when Israel has been strong-arming every Western country to send them billions, hundreds of billions, trillions have been spent on wars for Israel? It has to stop. Americans are just duped and just, again, brainwashed to support Israel from birth.
I'm glad you brought that up about Bibi. You recently went on a radio show as a caller, and you tried to lay out facts, but the host refused to even acknowledge that you deserve to breathe any air, didn't he?
Yeah, I just happened to turn on Mike Gallagher's show, and I told him that Americans were brainwashed from birth to support Israel, and I reminded him that Bibi Netanyahu, who I call the butcher of Gaza, that Ehud Olmert, the former prime minister of Israel, recently called Bibi a war criminal. And I pointed out that Israeli snipers are ordered to target Palestinian children, and that the IDF killed hundreds of Israelis on the October 7th attack because they'd already invoked the Hannibal Directive that calls for Israel to kill their own people rather than let them be taken captive. He claimed he didn't know anything about that, and he started screaming and calling me an anti-Semite, said I hated Jews, which, I told him I don't hate Jews. I hate what they're doing to these Palestinian people, stealing their land, stealing their resources. Most people don't know that they found in the last few years, they found a lot of oil and natural gas in Gaza and offshore of Gaza, and Israel plans on stealing all of it, just like they're stealing the oil in the Golan Heights, which is Syrian land that they stole, and Trump told them they could keep the land, even though he had no authority to do it. And then he hung up on me. I wanted to talk to him about the Israeli attack on the USS Liberty, or, the false flag on 9/11, or the bombing in Beirut. There's all kinds of evidence that Israel was behind the Marine bombing in Beirut that no one talks about. So people need to do their own research. Don't count on Fox News or any of these other networks telling the truth.
Well, they can't. Who controls the media, Pat?
Well, right. But that hasn't helped their popularity in America, because over 50% of Americans in a recent Pew and Rasmussen polls say they no longer support Israel. I think it was 53%, and that's 5% worse than it was last year. So they're losing ground every year to independent news on the internet. People are moving away from all these networks. And let's face it, there's over 330 million people in this country. Fox News on a good night only gets about 2.5, 3 million viewers, and MSNBC and CNN can't pull 2 million between them anymore. So really, not that many people are getting their news from the networks, and those people are completely clueless.
Yeah, the gaslighting of the American public, well, they had to ramp that up because of the number of independent news sites on the internet. You can't get a platform. I mean, look, Newsmax got kicked off of DirecTV because they were pro-Trump, and Newsmax was afraid that they were going to get blacklisted and lose their FCC license and all the garbage that the bureaucrats do. So Newsmax gets booted off.
Yeah, State of the Nation's going under. They've been under attack for years, and I've been writing for them for 8 years, and it was a fantastic site. They just can't keep it up, apparently. But, and again, people that question Israel's attack on 9/11, Alan Sabrowski, have you ever had him on your show?
No, never have.
He was the director of instruction at the Army War College on 9/11, and he's Jewish. And he said he's 100% positive that Israel was behind 9/11. And he gives his reasons for it. People should look him up on YouTube. He's got interviews on YouTube. Dr. Alan Sabrowski. So there's a mountain of evidence that the people have never seen. Most Americans don't know anything about Building 7, which came down in a controlled demolition at 5 o'clock that afternoon, and CNN reported that it had come down a half an hour before it fell. So that means that the media had prior knowledge of what was going on that day. And we know the Israelis had prior knowledge because they arrested about 6 Mossad agents that were filming the towers coming down. They later admitted that they were there to record the attack. So we know the Israelis had prior knowledge of the attacks. And, of course, Susan Lindauer, who worked for the CIA, you had her on your show. Mm-hmm. She admitted that she was briefed about the 9/11 attack 5 months before they happened. So Americans need to wake up. They're just being lied to.
Constantly. And the children, I mean, you want to program people, you start young. I mean, you think about Earth Day starting in the 70s. That was the beginning of the environmental movement and laid the groundwork for climate change or global warming or an ice age or whatever garbage they want to come up with at the time. You start with them young. So you don't tell them about 9/11 in middle school.
Mike Gallagher, I told him he wasn't a soldier for Christ. He's an ignorant puppet of the Zionist cabal that controls America, that spent trillions of dollars of our tax dollars fighting these Israeli wars. And I said, you're nothing but a neocon and a cheerleader for these disastrous wars in the Middle East, and have sold us out we've been sold out by controlled and blackmailed politicians like Lindsey Graham and John McCain.
Yep. It boggles my mind, Pat, how until you actually take a red pill and you start seeing everything for what it is. It's a cover-up of unimaginable levels. And, we offer Victor Thorne's book, 9/11 Evil. I read a book, Stranger Than Fiction, by Dr. Albert Pastore about 9/11. Mm-hmm. You find out that Silverstein got extremely rich off of the insurance payments for the towers that got destroyed.
Oh, yeah, it was like $5.8 billion on an investment of a handful of millions.
Yeah, and he hadn't had control of the buildings for very long. They had been condemned
it was like months.
And they had been condemned for having asbestos. He was looking at hundreds of millions of dollars for abatement. And that's why all the firefighters and first responders who were in the dust cloud are dying of cancer, is because of the asbestos. But you brought up Building 7. I know the BBC reported 20, 30 minutes before it fell that it was going down. The buildings, the Twin Towers, came straight down. Complete implosion. There is no other way that
they were demolished.
That those came down, straight down. None of them landed on Building 7. Why did Building 7 go down?
They claimed that it was damaged by fires. I mean, how ridiculous.
I didn't see a plane fly into Building 7.
Well, not a single steel and concrete building had ever fallen down because of a fire in the history of steel buildings. So it's just nonsense. I can't believe anybody ever bought it.
You know, everybody talks about they don't make them like they used to. You've heard that many times, right?
Oh yeah, I believe that. Absolutely.
So today's cars are made out of carbon fiber and plastic. That allows them to get the gas mileage that whatever bureaucrat in the EPA says we need to do. They're not made out of steel. So if you get in a head-on collision with today's cars, you end up with the engine in the cabin with the driver and any passengers. And very rarely do people survive. Even with these airbags, if they survive, their legs are junk for the rest of their hips for the rest of their life. Back in the 60s, when it was a steel frame, steel body, you had crush panels that were made out of steel, not aluminum. You could have a head-on collision. You didn't have an airbag, and most people didn't have safety harnesses. So they probably died from chest wounds where it broke the sternum or it stopped the heart, things of that nature. But the cars, if you look at them, they didn't have as much damage that you have today. Now, I understand that inertia, you want a certain amount of give to absorb the inertia in these car crashes. But back in the day, they built them tough. That's how they built the Twin Towers. If you've ever been up at an elevated level, you know how high the wind blows, how hard it blows. The towers would sway. If you had any kind of way to measure how much sway at the very top of the Twin Towers, you would see them move back and forth by the wind.
Yeah.
And how long were the towers up? They were built, what, in the 40s, 50s? So
no. The late 60s. Pretty sure it was late 60s.
Okay.
And then Building 7 was about 10 years later.
Even back then, the steel workers that built those towers, they walked the girders without any safety harnesses. We're talking serious U.S. steel was used, and the engineers that designed the skeleton for the Twin Towers made it as strong as they possibly could to withstand the high level of winds that would be at the very top of the building that would cause it to sway. You factor in that amount of movement for, maybe 50 years. Why didn't they collapse before then? And how do they come straight down? It boggles.
Well, how did these aluminum passenger jets pass through the steel and concrete exterior of that building? That never would have happened. I don't know if it was holograms or what happened there, but you can go to YouTube and there's a phantom jet that goes 500 miles an hour and hits a concrete wall, and it folds up like an empty can of beer when you step on it. It doesn't go through the concrete, and those planes would not have gone through those buildings. So I'm not sure what kind of CGI was used, but I don't think we got the truth there either.
Right. Well, Pat, we have flown through 30 minutes. We have to take a pause. My guest today is Pat McShay. We're covering Information Overload, Volume 19. You're listening to Power of Prophecy. Stay with us, won't you? We'll be right back. Hello, friends. Jerry Barrett back with you again. I want to tell you about this outstanding 4-DVD docuseries that we are offering entitled Sacrificing Liberty. This stunning documentary examines the tragic attack on the USS Liberty by Israeli forces on June 8, 1967. The true story of the USS Liberty is more shocking than any spy novel ever written by Tom Clancy. It was the most top-secret spy ship in the world, and its client was the NSA. The ship, with 294 souls aboard, were rushed to the Mediterranean Sea. Only the White House and Pentagon knew that Israel was ready to attack Arab nations. The USS Liberty was deliberately sent into a kill zone. The casualties were staggering. 34 killed, 174 wounded. The cover-up began as soon as the attacks started. And until now, the true story has never been allowed to be told. The aging survivors have finally been allowed to tell the true story. And Sacrificing Liberty sets the record straight. The truth told for the first time about Israel's massacre of the crewmen aboard the USS Liberty. There is lost video footage seen for the first time in decades. There are shocking first-time eyewitness testimonies from the men who survived this heinous attack. There is gut-wrenching descriptions of the carnage unleashed by the Israeli gunboats and Israeli warplanes. It connects the dots that link Lyndon Baines Johnson to the failed false flag operation to start a war with Egypt. Uncensored USS Liberty crewmen tell their true stories for the first time in 53 years. What was the role of Senator John McCain's dad in the cover-up? This docuseries also uncovers LBJ's Mossad mistress in the White House. 4 parts, only $30. Please add $6 shipping and handling. That will make your total $36 for Sacrificing Liberty. You can order your copy by phoning us toll-free in the United States and Canada at 1-800-234-9673. If you care to phone our regular line, that number is 512-263-9780. We're in the office Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Central Time. We accept Visa, MasterCard, Discover, and American Express. You can use those charge cards at our secure shopping cart at powerofprophecy.com. There's an ad for Sacrificing Liberty right there on the main page. Now, if you care to send in a check, money order, or cash, please make your check or money order payable to Power of Prophecy, and you can mail it to us here at 4819 R.O. Drive, Suite 102, Spicewood, Texas, and our zip code is 78669. Okay, and now let's return to our regular program. My guest today is Pat McShay. Pat, welcome back.
Hey, Jay, it's great to be here.
Now, there is a big event happening at the courthouse, and it is bringing out some very strange connections. P. Diddy is on trial for sex trafficking and a host of other crimes against people, but it was revealed that there is a connection with the CIA, wasn't there?
Yes, there was. P. Diddy's assistant, longtime assistant, her name is Mia. She worked for Diddy for a long time, and she claims that Diddy arranged for a CIA tour for Mike Myers, former Saturday Night Live famous actor Austin Powers. You know, Diddy, a lot of people, big names like Oprah Winfrey and Tom Hanks and John Travolta, Kathy Griffin, these people that were at these freak-offs like Allie Carter, who was an underage girl that was trafficked by Diddy. When she testifies, she's going to bring up an awful lot of names. So we'll have to see if they try to keep her from testifying, because if she testifies, people will be shocked at the people that were at these freak-offs. She also names Denzel Washington, who is a famous black actor and well-regarded and respected by the black community. Allie Carter said he was at one of the freak-offs. Another bodyguard of Diddy said that Jamie Foxx was poisoned by Diddy.
Wow.
So, and a lot of people believe that he poisoned his girlfriend, Kim Roberts, who died, and Diddy threatened people's lives quite often. That was part of his MO, was threatening people and blackmailing people. Like Jeffrey Epstein, P. Diddy had cameras in all of the rooms in his mansion and all the bathrooms. So he was filming everything. And there are videos out there. Again, one of his bodyguards has already done a video. It's on YouTube, where he said he's seen the videos where P. Diddy was raping underage people, famous underage people, and adults that were under the influence or had been drugged. So if the truth comes out, P. Diddy will never get out of prison again. You have to wonder if they're going to cover all this up.
You have to wonder, because I think I read somewhere that Obama's name was floated as one of the visitors to one of these freak-offs of Diddy.
Allie Carter named Barack Obama and Joe Biden as two people that abused her when she was a young girl.
You have to think that Diddy is going to get Epstein in prison.
Yeah, you would think. Another girl that I wrote about in this article named Sarah Ruth Ashcroft, she claims that she was sexually abused and her father trafficked her to people in Hollywood, and she said Tom Hanks was one of the people, and Hillary Clinton, that were her abusers. She said she was only 8 years old when she was abused by Hillary Clinton as part of a satanic occult ritual abuse event. She's 36 years old now, and she's sticking with her story. They finally got rid of her. She was on Twitter. I followed her for a long time, and they finally got her off of Twitter, but she's never backed down from her story. People should read my article, P. Diddy and the Elite Satanic Ritual Sex and Pedophile Ring. Look it up on Yandex. I wouldn't use Google. They're censoring my articles quite a bit. So is Bing now. So any kind of real truth, they're censoring. And anybody that uses Google Chrome, they're censoring all kinds of websites. So I'd be concerned. Get on Brave or get on anything but Google Chrome right now.
Yeah. Anything to do with Google bothers me. But it's become part of the vernacular, instead of saying, because when the internet first started out becoming big, it was go to Yahoo. Just Yahoo it. And then Google came along and everybody thought, well, this is even better. Well, Google used that to corner the market. They bought up Instagram. They bought up a number of other social media platforms, YouTube. And now the censor ability of this organization is immense. So, yeah, there's other venues that you can search with.
Yeah, Google's just evil. They've got to break Google up. Again, Jewish-owned. I'm not saying everything Jewish-owned is bad, but when it comes to all of this AI stuff and anything to do with the internet. Google needs to just be put aside. Yandex, YANDEX.com is the best search engine right now. They don't censor anything right now. DuckDuckGo is horrible. Bing's getting bad. But, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember when DuckDuckGo was good, and then they kind of partnered with Google, and all of a sudden there's articles that don't show. If you look for an article, it's all liberal gibberish. It's no longer both sides, and that's why I liked DuckDuckGo, was because you got both sides and you could do your own discernment, do some digging on both sides to see how much of each side was kind of doctoring the wording, so to speak. So, you know, you, in the first half, you mentioned Trump being kind of shielded, not given the entire truth. And I think you posted this on Twitter a while back, but there was an interview that John Rich, one of the country singers, but he is America First, was interviewed, and he talked about to Trump's face about the COVID jab, and there was a politician tried to dissuade Trump from listening to John, and John kind of shut him down, didn't he?
Yes, he did. You know, I saw him tell this story on Twitter, and he was sitting right to Trump's left at a big conference table with a number of people, and Trump turned to him and said, "Why are people booing me when I bring up the COVID vaccine?" And John Rich said he thought for a minute, and he said, "Well, if I tell him the truth, he may never have me back here, but I'm not going to lie to him." So he said, "Well, Mr. President," he said, "these vaccines are killing millions of people, and they're seriously injuring a lot more people." And he said, "You should do something about that and intervene and take these off of the CDC schedule." And Trump said, okay. He thought about it, and he said, "I'm going to look into that." John Rich said, "Man, I'm glad I said something." And yes, he said that one of the politicians there tried to get Trump to shut him down, and John Rich said, "Hey, I'm talking right now. Shut up." Which I thought was awesome.
You know, Trump needs to hear the truth from everyday normal Americans that are tuned in to truth, not the sycophants that he's got surrounding him, not the briefing people that are giving him whatever they want. And, you know, I've read a number of novels. I know they're fiction, but there's a lot of truth in these things. The people control policy by limiting what information is given to the president. Doesn't matter if it's Trump, Biden, Obama, Bush, Reagan, they have their agenda.
Oh, yeah. And look how far they went with Biden. I doubt they even gave him briefings, and they were going around the Oval Office on literally everything. And now we're finding out that the auto pen was being controlled by a few other people, and we don't know that Biden knew anything about these executive orders or pardons. He had more pardons than the last 10 presidents. I think they're going to do something about that, I hope, but
we'll see.
Something has to be done, and I don't think Trump is getting real briefings. I don't think there's any way.
Right. Everybody controls what information goes on to Trump for him to make a decision, and they slant it to the decision they want him to make. It's human nature that you have your own little fiefdom that you're going to protect. You know, you're looking to expand your budget so you can get more staff and you can be hoity-toity. It's just all about power. When you get an audience with a president, that is the penultimate of power and suggesting certain actions take place.
Well, we saw evidence of that with Mike Waltz, who finally got fired, but, you know, he was doing a backdoor to beating Netanyahu behind Trump's back, pushing this Iran strike. And then you've got General Kellogg running the Ukraine debacle. You know, he was pro-Ukraine war. You would think Trump would get somebody in there that actually wants peace and isn't going to go behind his back and, you know, maybe deal with Lindsey Graham and Dick Blumenthal.
Right.
Two of the biggest warmongers in the Senate. And Lindsey Graham's talking about doing a bipartisan bill. What he's really saying there is he's going to get these Democrats that hate Trump to blow up his agenda.
Yeah, Lindsey Graham has a primary problem, though. We'll see what happens in midterms.
I think he should be gone. I think John Cornyn should be gone.
In a heartbeat.
I think a lot of these guys need to go.
Oh, yeah. Now, I want to get with this because I think I brought this up with Sandra last week. I can't remember. All my dates run together, but I have talked about this. Greta Thunberg, she was already in one flotilla that got attacked by the IDF. She is in another flotilla that is bringing aid to Gaza. Now, however your temperature is with Greta Thunberg, I know she is an attention-deprived individual who is out there pushing climate change and getting arrested and smiling for the camera. A lot of it is a hoax, but she has gained popularity. You cannot deny that for what she did with the climate change garbage. Now she is bringing attention to the plight of the Palestinians in Gaza because she's on a flotilla with aid that's on its way to Gaza to help the Palestinians.
Yep.
Is that going to prevent a USS Liberty type attack on that flotilla?
I think it will. And first, when I saw that, I just thought that's just another grandstanding moment from someone who's, you know, clearly being used by George Soros. She's taking pictures with George Soros. I think he's her mentor, but absolutely, I think that will stop a Mavi Marni type event, which the Turks are still angry about one of their citizens being killed in that attack. Ken O'Keefe was on that Mavi Marni too. I don't know whatever happened to Ken O'Keefe, but I really liked him. But yes, hopefully her presence will stop any violent attack.
We will see. Now, there was also recently an attack against so-called pro-Jewish protesters in Colorado. Some Muslim madman had a improvised flamethrower and Molotov cocktails. He lit people on fire. Considering everything that's happened, could this have been a false flag?
I think it definitely could. You know, that they could have cleared out an area. They could have set an area on fire. They could have had, you know, they had video of the guy carrying an aerosol can. What was he doing? Lighting his Zippo and firing the flames at people? The whole thing sounded ridiculous. They said he had a flamethrower that he made. I don't know what that means. And apparently no one died. They said people are hospitalized. To me, if you have a complicit media, that definitely is something that could have been contrived, because that's all the news has talked about since it happened. And, you know, I'd like to see a little more clarity on that, because let's face it, Israel has been behind so many false flags over the last 4 or 5 decades. Just go back to the Lebanon affair. When was that? The early 60s, late 50s? So many attacks that turned out to be Israeli false flags. So, and then you've got Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the Rebbe, who died, 30 years ago, and they think he's going to be their savior coming back the way Christians look for Jesus to come back. Rabbi Schneerson, Trump visited his grave when he was over there. So did his daughter and Jewish son-in-law. And Rabbi Schneerson doesn't think much of non-Jews. He said that non-Jews have a soul that is satanic. and that only Jews have a holy soul. So that's how pretty much most of the rabbis in Israel think about Americans and Christians. They still spit on Catholic priests that walk down the street in Israel. They spit when they walk by a Christian cemetery. They hate Christians.
Yeah.
Watch Men on the Street videos with Israelis and bring up Americans and Christians. These people hate Christians. It's just mind-boggling that Christians in America are just being useful idiots like Bibi Netanyahu said.
For sure. And there was recently a rabbi that is in charge of, I don't know, political doctrine or whatever they do in the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces. And he had something very disturbing to say that it was okay for IDF people to do.
Yes, he's the chief rabbi of the IDF and a colonel in the Israeli army. And he said that Israeli soldiers should be able to rape non-Jewish women when they're at war. How do you like that? Wonder what Mike Gallagher would have to say about that. I wonder what Mark Levin would say about that. Is he okay with that? Because that's what the chief rabbi of their army thinks. And, a lot of the things, I've written about this, a lot of the things that they accuse the Palestinians and Hamas of in the October 7th attack, first of all, the 1,400 dead, that's a lie. That's an exaggeration. The babies, beheaded babies, and the babies in ovens, that's all been debunked. All the cars that were blown up and set on fire in the parking lot, hundreds of cars, they were all blown up and caught on fire by Israeli gunships provided by the U.S. and Israeli tanks. They were firing on the Israeli kibbutzes, and they were killing hundreds of Israelis, not Hamas. Hamas may have killed their share, but the Israelis were killing, Israeli army was killing Israeli citizens because they had put the Hannibal Directive in place, which calls for Israeli army soldiers to kill citizens who are about to be captured. They also attacked an Israeli base based on the Hannibal Directive. So people need to look into that because the American media is never going to report any of that.
No, never. Now, there was an article that recently came out. Jamie Dimon, CEO of Goldman Sachs, came out and he said that Americans need to invest in bullets and not Bitcoin. Does he have insider knowledge?
Yeah, I think he does, and I think he sees that the bond market is doing horribly, and I think that he sees that we have a lot of banks in this country that are in trouble. If you go into a lot of American banks and European banks, if you want to take out a couple $1,000, they question you on why you want that money. If that doesn't concern people, it should, because the FDIC that people think will protect their deposit, that FDIC money will only secure about 1% of deposits in these banks. So that money will be gone in about 20 minutes if there's a run on banks.
Yeah.
So we have a scary situation in this country, and we're going to add in Trump's big, beautiful new bill $2 trillion every year for the next 10 years. So that's $20 trillion added to our deficit. It's just unsustainable.
Not sustainable at all. I mean, we're spending I read it and I can't remember. It was like $100 million a month just to pay the interest of the federal debt. It's something stupid like that we're paying the interest before we even pay down the debt. And there's pork stuffed in this big, beautiful, but it's as big a scam as Biden's Inflation Reduction Act. And Trump is pushing it. Well, we're going to cut. No, you're not. Elon Musk has looked at it and said, we're not cutting anything. This is going to be horrendous.
Yeah, why didn't, Senator Scott from Florida said, we need to go line by line. He said that's what we did in Florida, and we found a lot of waste and we cut it out. They need to go line by line, and they need to start cutting this bill down. That's the only way they're going to get it through. Rand Paul's not going to vote on it. Senator Scott said he's not going to vote on it. Mitch McConnell and Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins aren't going to vote for it. So if Trump thinks he's going to ram this through, I think he's got another thing coming.
I hope so, Pat. I hope that people actually pay attention to the garbage that is in this bill. And I know that Johnson will bring it, once it's all set up and everything, Johnson will bring it to the floor like he did out of committee without giving people a chance to read it, kind of like Pelosi with Obamacare. Well, we have to pass the law so that we can figure out what's in it. How does that makes 0 sense, Pat? That is not fiscally responsible. And the House controls the purse strings. We got to get rid of all the pork spending that these idiots keep putting in the bill. And they tell their constituents, well, look what I'm bringing back for you. Screw the rest of America, but I'll take care of you. That's why you put me in office. That's not.
What is Congress doing? I mean, they're sure not doing anything to, get rid of these judges that are getting in the way of deporting these illegal aliens. I haven't seen where they impeached Boasberg or any of these flaky judges that were appointed by Obama and Clinton and Biden.
I turn on C-SPAN and all I see are hearings for this, that, and the other. Why aren't these people actually working with certified public accountants, some financial guru, to balance this budget? Quit wasting money. I mean, that's why Trump brought in Doge in the first place, right? Was to cut waste. And they have tried. But the politicians that have the ultimate power aren't doing anything to follow the directives except give it lip service. We need to reconcile all the things that Doge has put in place and we need to pass it and blah, blah, blah. They don't want it, Pat. They want to keep the money flowing to their district so they keep getting elected and they got their seat of power and they got their prestige and their perks. And it's a vicious cycle until something changes with the mindset inside the Beltway in D.C. Nothing is ever going to get better. We're going to keep wasting money hand over fist. It's just stupid. Pat, we have flown through an hour, man.
That did go quick.
Another program is in the can, so to speak. Pat, thanks for coming on and being a guest of Power of Prophecy. I always appreciate our discussions, buddy.
No, Jay, I appreciate it too. I have a lot of fun.
Okay, that's going to take care of this week's program. My guest today has been investigative reporter extraordinaire Pat McShay. We want to thank you for tuning in and giving us an hour of your time. We greatly appreciate it. And as always, I pray you will tune in again next week at this same time. Tune in and discover the power of prophecy.